Okay, so left side is a very nice picture. THP 64 oil 11-inch and 11 by 14 1987 serigraph edition of 25 11 by 15 1990. Chapter 2, The Hidden Work. In earlier forms of
Okay.
religious obligation, the whole assembly was aware of its invocational significance and expected to produce through its efforts a shared higher emotion which would transport it as a single body into higher dimensions near that of the absolute. Originally, the moralistic sermons common in church worship today were never part of religious services. The earliest forms of the sermon was a story told by the village storyteller, usually a priestess or a shaman. They were usually stories about the gods, the spirits, the prophets, and the saints, and before the written forms of religious doctrine, they were told with gesture and even acting out, in much the same way that all tribal storytellers everywhere have related the history and religious myths of the tribe even before the dawn of history. Continuing the right, let me read this again. Continuing right up to the present day. Eventually, as they were repeated many times over, the stories came to be formalized and simplified into some form of catechism connected with beat counting or weaving to help the storyteller remember the details and sequence in which the stories were organized. All this was long before the stories came to be written down. I pass.
Okay, that is a huge chunk. And I don't know how many of you have ever done any training in traditional religious forms, but my background included both the Presbyterians, the Baptists, and the Methodists. And I do recall that the thing that people went to church for, and it was a going to place, it wasn't in your home, and it wasn't usually with your neighbors, it was with people you only knew because they were at church. What you did was you go there for some socialization, check in on everybody, make sure everybody goes, okay, how's your son, how's your daughter, blah, blah, blah. And to hear someone stand up and tell you how you should be doing better and reference it to some biblical passage. Now, did anybody else have that experience as what they're describing in that very first sentence originally, the moralistic sermons common in church worship today, were never part of religious services? Is that what you guys experienced? If you did any?
Yes, but not that often, maybe once or twice a year.
Right.
Are you kind of saying like to be corrected?
No, I'm saying that was exactly my experience, that the moralistic sermons was what came out of the church experience that I had as a kid in those traditions that I've named. Not what they say later. The earliest form of the sermon was a story about gods and spirits and stuff. And it was theatrical. It wasn't a lecture. It wasn't a telling you what you're doing wrong thing. It was, I don't know. Has anybody been to native tribe ceremonies.
Oh yeah, I've done sweats
Yeah.
and stuff, but all that was pretty laid back. Nothing
Okay.
was heavy-handed or laid upon you.
Yeah. I just find it interesting that this chapter begins with a preface of the statement of what hidden work is about. And then the first paragraph is about all the ways that we have been not doing it.
I would say that it's the classic religion and or religious meeting, Sunday meetings, were, as you said, social and emotional, moralistic laundry. I'm thinking of Tom. You have to be good. You have to behave well. You have to. In case you have done wrong in the Catholic arena, you have to confess, and then you will say some Hail Mary and that sort of things, no? So that has nothing to do with the first part of this chapter. That at least tries to share that in the beginning it was not a social, emotional activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I just jump in there, Patricia?
Yes.
I think
please.
that's why I responded with the correction thing. And that's why I can relate to what Bernie just said. Maybe I got you wrong, but I don't know why Bernie said what he said, but it sounds like Bernie was kind of saying what I was getting at.
Uh-huh. Well, it just indicates to me as I'm taking this as the setup, like the preamble to why this book needed to be written in the first place, which is there's been a big mistake about the manner in which you can be of service to the absolute. And it isn't by performing ritual. And it goes further into it as we go along. But anyway, I've not ever had that take on it. I've read the book in order to get the statements about what it is that should be doing. I've never read it to see why is it that this has come about. Never looked at the background of it, which to me, the preface and that first paragraph are setting up what is the situation that is requiring a restatement, a refocus, a reinvestment of our energy and attention on the presence of the absolute rather than ritual. Does that make sense? That's
It
where I'm
does.
at. That's
Yes,
where
it
I'm at.
does. Yes, it does.
Okay, anybody else want to comment on on this first page? Because I'm not expecting us to be swimming quick through this material.
Yeah, I had something. Actually, I was just thinking a couple days back. What is the importance of stories? You know, why we will want to hear stories. You know, even in like Hindu mythology, there are so many stories. This god talked to this other god, and this is what happened. And, you know, then there were some circumstances that did not work out. And I mean, very interesting stories. But what is why we keep looking for, even now when we, you know, that there is a new movie coming out, we are like, oh, new movie, you know, something new, some new story will be there. What is what is the fascination with stories? You know, even like when I'm done with the day, you know, I come back from work, wrap things up. Before going to bed, I want to watch TV for like half an hour, an hour. You know, pretty much looking for a good story. You know, like how kids are sent to bed. You know, their granddad would tell them some stories, and they would go to bed. So I just wonder what is our fascination? What is the attraction to stories?
I would like not to answer.
Yes.
It's not. I don't have the truth to answer it, but I in my way of exploring this thing of stories that I am very familiar to stories, I would say that at least let's give the opportunity to stories that there are two ways of seeing these stories. One is what we are accustomed mostly in Western world is to take the stories as factual. So the story has to be understood, and it states a fact. That is the way we see it as a possibility. Then there's we're accustomed at another story seeing the moral, you know, Aesop's fables, no? We see,
Yeah.
that is the moral of it. You did wrong, so now you are punished. But I would say that it's very interesting to leave a part of that way of seeing the stories, not factual, not moral, but a kind of holography. I don't know if it's the word exact, no? Holograph of the working of the mind. Because some stories here and in the East, and they sometimes you see that they don't make sense exactly, at least in our rational view. But that could be a purpose by the storyteller that is not factual and not moral, but is showing how our mind works and how we give attention to some parts and are blind to other parts. And so that is at least an interesting possibility. Thank you.
Yeah, because, you know, Bernie, when you were saying, you know, I just remembered I attended this person, Tony Robbins seminar. I don't know if you know this, he's been doing it for many years, but he keeps saying this, and I never quite understood what he's saying. Maybe I do now, but he says, if you want to change your life, you need to change your story. And I said, what does that mean? He keeps saying that we have a story in our mind that this is how my life is. This is what happened when I was a kid. This is what happened when, you know, I was a young adult, and, you know, what I am now. And it keeps repeating in your mind that the same story. And he said, if you want to change the events of your life, you need to change the story, that how you perceive yourself. If you always feel that my dad, you know, or my parents were not good to me, you know, I had tough time, blah, 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 those things will keep on repeating unless you change your story. So it just, you know, just a couple of days back, I was thinking, I said, what is the fascination with the stories? Why we are so much attracted to getting a story, and, you know, listening and enjoying and, you know, relating to that? What is the need to do that?
Good. Maybe some of that will come to all of us while we read this. Because I would declare that the activity of the spoken word shared from a common text develops the capacity of a larger mind. We can all make good use of that.
Yeah, thanks.
Sandy, would you take us on to the next page? Is that okay? Did anybody else wish to speak before we go on? Thank you.
Okay. It is not well known, but the Old Testament was in the beginning a collection of tribal myths, which were only recorded on paper many centuries after they were introduced to the tribe for the purpose of preparing its members for their initiation into adult life. At that time, the tribe had not yet settled. It was a group of nomads wandering along trade and water roads. Later came a period when the stories were organized into various theatrical forms, both in the form of ritualized religious gatherings and in more obviously theatrical presentations called mystery plays, like those of the Hellenic Greek and the Western European medieval periods, performed before audience who could neither read nor write, and who were intentionally kept by the powerful aristocrats of their time as perpetually illiterate, ignorant, and superstitious as inhumanly possible, just to make them easier to control. And I'll pass.
Thank you.
I just want to let you know that can you hear my voice? Because I'm having problems with the mic, but I'm here now, so.
Loud and clear, Bev, loud and clear.
Thank you.
That's good.
Could you tell me, I'm sorry to be taking up this time right now, but could you tell me where we are in the book?
We're on page 6.
Page 6.
And we're on just starting the third paragraph on page 6 that says, in the next phase.
Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome. So, Bernie?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
In the next phase, after the population became literate and a little more informed in spite of everything those in power could do to prevent it, these tribal myths became more or less available to the general populace, and so the religious leaders spent the majority of their time defending the mythos which had developed over the centuries, explaining first this discrepancy and then that one. It was not too long before these tribal stories became ritualized, moralistic lessons interpreted for the audience according to the subjective conditioning and personal phobias of the presiding priests. In the beginning, when the organizers had real knowledge, churches utilized the whole process of evocation, which is a process of drawing out of oneself the mental and emotional atmosphere necessary for invocation, in which the whole assembly could pass from a lower dimension to a higher dimension by the process of drawing down upon oneself a higher consciousness, and at the same time sending transformed lower substances upward through the process of reciprocal feeding.
All right. Pop quiz. Who's ever heard of that concept before in this configuration.
Not I.
Is this Tonglen? What is this? Tonglen? Are they talking about Tonglen?
Well, it indicates a indoctrination of sufficient knowledge that they can do what's said in that last sentence at the bottom of the page, the process of drawing out of oneself the mental and emotional atmosphere necessary for invocation. So that's already a huge process, not related to raising children and growing wheat. And then it says the whole assembly, as in every single body there, could pass from a lower to a higher. By then, this is the thing I'm asking. By the process of drawing down upon oneself a higher consciousness, and at the same time sending transformed lower substances upward through the process of reciprocal feeding. Did anyone have that experience going to church? Or any instruction about it as part of church?
No.
No? Well, shucks. That seems to be what it was supposed to be. I'm taking my turn now, guys. During the earliest form of ritualized communion, which came from the Sumerians and found its best known expression in the Passover supper as given by the man called Jesus, the blood, the body, and the exact corresponding mood of the absolute were invoked. The whole of the assembly in these earlier forms of religious obligation was aware of the invocational significance of the assembly, and they expected to produce through their efforts and to participate in a shared higher emotion, which would transport them as a single body composed of many human bodies and minds into the higher dimension. Very exact gradations of mood were thus evoked in a definite sequence by the priests or priestesses. Now I'm going to diverge from the text here for 1 minute. I think everybody here is a sufficient age that if I say the 60s and LSD, you will know what I'm speaking of.
Right.
Does anybody not understand that reference? Oh, okay. Thank you, Bartleman. So if you
No, I absolutely do. I just was
I
saying
know.
peace.
Yeah, I saw it.
What is this? Sorry.
The 60s,
Yeah, I think maybe.
the 60s, as in the decade of the 60s, 1960s. So that word, the 60s, and this other word, LSD.
Oh, LSD. Yes.
You have the context there. You may have no reference for that context. The original references, as in what is described here, for the gathering of folks in, quote, a religious observance, was for the purpose of transformational activity, not for getting high and having a good time, is my point. I just find it amazing that the context of this chapter has a lot of reference. Anybody have any questions about any of this so far?
I don't have a question, but I see that this is very sound information. Very sound information. And I have read this book many times, but
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yep.
When I read it, this in group, it's different.
Yeah.
I understand much more. It's magic.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a beautiful example of what group reading is meant to do. Yeah. Okay. Nishant, you want to carry on for us?
This was an experimental process only in the very beginning, and after a few centuries, the exact results of these higher mental, emotional, and physical evocations of consciousness were thoroughly mapped, and the priests and priestesses knew exactly how to lead the congregation on a journey in which they experienced a passage through higher dimensions very near that of the Absolute itself. The mood of the congregation was not left to chance. The invocant priestesses and priests must have seemed to people armed only with ordinary knowledge like magicians, in the sense that they knew exactly how to evoke these higher religious feelings. They intentionally shaped by sight and sound the mood of their congregation to attain that exact passage through higher dimensions, which they knew would be most useful to the Absolute. The architecture, window lighting, candles, incense burn, music, costume, and chanting all contributed to the evocation of this series of sacred moods.
Thank you. Scott.
Okay, we're reading from The Atmosphere or Was Aroused.
Yes.
And just a couple paragraphs or to the bottom of the page.
What feels right to you? No,
Okay.
no rules.
All right. The atmosphere was aroused by the speaking, chanting, and dancing of the priest storyteller, and sometimes by additional choral singers, dancers, and even by the whole tribe, sometimes so enthusiastically that they became immersed in ecstatic union. You may well wonder how all this was lost. It's just another of those maleficent results of our mechanized over-civilization. Most of us have no way of knowing, because we grew up with the radio and television and all sorts of automatic entertainment, that before the Victrola and radio were invented, most families could sing, tell stories, or play musical instruments. But after automatic passive home entertainment was introduced, people stopped telling stories, singing, playing instruments, and participating actively in anything. From then on, they were content just to listen.
Is that a pass?
Oh yeah, pass.
Thank you. Beverly.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Before the invention of baseball, football, hockey, cinema, radio, and television, people in America found their entertainment either by taking a stroll in the park, visiting a museum or an exposition, listening to a recital at a concert hall, or a small band at a gazebo, eating at an ice cream parlor, or singing or playing musical instruments, or taking time for prayer or scriptural study together at home. Now, of course, all this has changed. Today, everyone sits glued in total rapture to a fluorescent screen of some kind, either a television screen, computer screen, or video game screen, and waits to be told what to do next or what to buy on the next excursion to the local supermarket, or sits passively in something resembling a state of catatonia while being incessantly bombarded with what is widely regarded as entertainment. Okay.
Yeah, I guess we relate, right? Bardo Man.
Naturally, should a single moment go by when something or other does not keep their attention immersed in total fascination, they immediately and without a moment's hesitation switch channels on their television sets or change the cassette in their video game computers. If something should happen to interrupt this non-stop passive entertainment, or on the occasion of a football strike, they open a can of beer, send for their famous pizza or Chinese food, or just wander off to bed in complete confusion. And these are the same people who wish for immortality. Pass.
Are you there, Tom?
Yes, I'm here.
Ready to-
Immortality? Yeah, I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, just to keep up social appearances and not to endanger their business relations with others in their community, and at the same time trying to give the impression to their easily offended friends that they are not nearly as stupid in the sense of stupefied as they really are. They do as the Romans of the imperial period did, which is to say, they make an impressive show of visiting the temple in which their local religious cult holds its fertility rites, such as they are, where they sit passively with others of their economic class, most of whom have made it a point to be seen attending the services, only because they are equally concerned with their own business relations, until they are instructed by the gaudily overdressed priest or preacher to sing or give the responsorial to some mechanical prayer, all the while hoping that nobody notices that they are wearing last year's fashion. This is more or less what has become of the original meetings for the fulfillment of our sacred obligations to the absolute path.
Nishant? Oh, no, excuse me. It's Jayesh. I forgot.
Yeah, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Knowledge has been replaced by ritual devoid of significance. Objective prayer has been replaced by subjective prayer. If only we knew the ancient use and method of prayer, then we would be able to pay nature for our organic arising and at the same time ascend to the cross for the alleviation of the suffering of the Absolute. During the days of the Sumerian and Babylonian civilizations, they knew exactly how to make real prayer. Those were the good old days when knowledge and understanding prevailed. Immortality was not sought after for itself. The question of why man exists and why the Creator made the possibility of immortality for human beings was tied to the sole purpose of alleviating the suffering of the endless Creator. The work is a return to this world because we have compassion toward the Absolute. Because of this compassion, we are willing to take the obligation to perfect ourselves, endure eternal return, awaken the machine, and allow it to act upon our being as a source of transformation. This is what makes the work different from a bodhisattva vow, for which one returns to this world as a form of compassion toward all other beings. And I pass.
Thank you. I'm going to hold it there for a moment. As a statement, or as multiple statements, for me, this paragraph is clear, concise, accurate, and horrifying. Because as an objective, in most of my states, it appears to be something unreachable. However, the manner in which the description is given of what is possible and how it can be done, for me, it's detailed in this paragraph, which is certainly something that I would not have expected to be as precise, but I'm grateful that it is. So the sentence, the question of why man exists and why the Creator made the possibility of immortality for human beings was tied to the sole purpose of alleviating the suffering of the endless Creator. I can't think of a more precise and succinct description of what is the purpose of man than this.
Yeah, and at the end of the paragraph, this what makes the work different from a bodhisattva vow.
Yep.
I was having wrong understanding of which kind of clear today it seems like that I used to think about having bodhisattva vow is to keep reincarnating, and that is happening all over the world. Maybe all the bodhisattvas keep coming, but for the reason is different here. It is the form of compassion toward all the beings rather than alleviating the suffering of the Absolute.
Yeah.
So it's a compassion toward Absolute rather than all beings, kind of. It is same in the sense, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess if I was to look at the texts that we've read so far, and we started with creation story verbatim, because for me, that's an easy entrance into a lot of material that is extremely out there if you haven't been introduced. And I always thought that EJ's method of giving an introduction to the work in the form of a play that had a female god for a start, and this was, from 50 years ago, it gives the opportunity for accessing what you do know and finding out what you don't, or what you would like to enhance. And it doesn't say that what you know is incorrect. It just says its placement or its priority is misplaced. And that I find extremely helpful. the paragraph before the sentence before that, because of this compassion, we are willing to take the obligation to perfect ourselves, endure eternal return, awaken the machine, and allow it to act upon our being as a source of transformation. That is a statement of purpose. And I think it could apply in any situation. Well, I'm done lecturing. Shall we go on, or does anybody else want to speak?
Yeah, no, that relates to that creation story verbatim. Put it in a concise manner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of confused here, Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this compassion, we are willing to take the obligation to perfect ourselves, endure eternal return. How does that differ from the Bodhisattva vow for which one returns to this world? I'm confused.
I understand it probably not literally, but my take on it is that if I am agreeing that I can live and live and live, be in a machine, take on a form, and the purpose for that is for the compassion towards the absolute. Whereas I believe that in the formation of the Bodhisattva vow, it is compassion for all other beings.
I understand. Thank
It's
you.
the direction of the,
Right.
yeah.
Absolute versus all other beings.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have time for another reading, or we can not. One more? Yeah, Sandy, go for it.
Yeah.
Sure. Not all human beings are able to be willing to work for the absolute. Okay. It is a genuine source of terror for the ordinary man that the absolute might need help of any kind. Hence, the periodic abundance of available work positions. The method of voluntary ascension to the cross is no longer known through ordinary means, nor does it survive in initiatism, knowledge passed down through the centuries from father to son and from mother to daughter, except in the case of King Oedipus. Prayer absolute, the method of ascension to the cross, was so commonly known by everybody that ancient initiates never thought it necessary to encapsulate it in initiations to be passed down from their century to ours. Prayer as it is today is useless in the objective sense, because all contemporary prayer is subjective, even when sending up waves of good vibrations to Mr. God in heaven. I'll pass.
Thank you. Bernie, it's your turn, right?
Yes, thank you. Oh, there is perhaps something preserved here and there. Now and then, we might happen to discover, if we know what we are looking for, some real knowledge preserved in the ritual of contemporary religion. For instance, at some time in the early history of Western monastic life, something has been known about the voluntary ascension, but it is lost today. The use of ceremony in modern religion is entirely subjective because religion has become homocentric. And I pass there.
Thank you. Yes. Beverly.
We must fully realize that praise is not prayer, nor is prayer religion. We should strive to learn the meaning of the phrase. Oh, is this bene? Is it Latin?
Try it and see.
Okay. Bene, orese, es bene, laborase, which means, oh, to pray well is to work well. In ancient Egypt, the prayer absolute was well known. It was called the hidden work, and records were kept by the temple priests of their attempts to meet this obligation toward the absolute. And then in parentheses, I accidentally discovered the method of prayer absolute in the course of studying ancient Sumerian, Babylonian, Eurasian, and Egyptian artifacts during several museum excavations. That's EJ talking, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nishant, did you get a second chance? Yes, no? I lost my count here.
No, not yet.
Okay, go for it.
It has long been a technique of schools to transmit data by means of food and drink, and even through artifacts and monuments specially charged with a certain type of higher force. The force thus transmitted penetrates the whole of the organic biological machine, bringing special knowledge into contact with ordinary information already present in the brain, and over a long period of time, even producing real change in the being. In some cases, the influence of an emanating artifact, monument, or even a man who has undergone transformation and afterward is a source of higher radiation, can produce a small change in someone contacting or passing through the sphere of influence even momentarily, as sometimes happens when one visits a shrine or comes in contact with a saint.
That bring up any memories or any references for folks? Those last two paragraphs? Sometimes we use the words vibration to indicate that there's some kind of an electrical charge that could be in a space or around a gathering or, name it. I think that's one of the things that EJ has been incredibly prolific at all the time. The production of resonating artifacts, beacons, earrings. There is a chance that some of these have been ours before this cycle. We recognize it. I'm going to ask if anyone wants to stop here for the day because I've got a little assignment, and it is more than we can easily finish this chapter for today. So what I'm going to ask is if people will take this chapter with them, finish reading it aloud to yourself or another, if you have another to read it to, before our next gathering, so that it will be complete as far as you know. But we will start again on page 12, paragraph 3. Somebody's writing this down for me since I have no memory any longer. And if you could put a little bit of energy into recalling, if you can, any circumstances under which you may have been exposed or you may have recalled the passage of some of this ancient material, teaching material, however you want to reference it. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
And let's share it with each other. And I guess all we can do is just say, see you next time.
Before we go, I have
Yes.
one joke from EJ's comedy collection, right?
Oh, good. Yes.
So Patrick goes to confession and says to the priest, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I have been with a loose woman." The priest says, "Is that you, Patrick?" "Yes, Father, it's me." "Tell me, who was the woman you were with?" "I cannot tell you, Father. I don't wish to ruin her reputation." "Was it Teresa?" "No, Father." "Was it Mary?" "No, Father." "Was it Bernadette?" "No, Father." "Very well, Patrick. I can see you are not going to tell me. Go and say five Our Fathers and 4 Hail Marys." Patrick goes back to his pew and his pal Tommy whispers to him, "So what happened?" The Patrick says, "It was okay. I got 5 Our Fathers, 4 Hail Marys, and 3 good leads."
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Thank you, JH. That's good. Oh, that's good. Sandy and I are staying back after a few minutes to do what Hans is asking us to do. Is that okay with you, Sandy? You got a minute or
right.
two? Okay, good.
Thanks,
I
guys.
will see you in
Yeah.
2 weeks, and
Thank you. Thank you.
enjoy your hidden work.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.
All right, all right.
Bye, Tom.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Hi, Tom.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you for doing this, Bartleman. That's great.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sandy. Thanks for your
Yes.
help. Thanks,
Thanks,
Patricia.
Patricia.
I'll see you guys soon.
Have a great
Okay.
evening.
For sure.
Yes, you
Bye.
as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.